Hi Ultimate Gardeners, welcome back to the Ultimate Gardening channel. My name is Emmanuel Arce, well known to be the Ultimate Gardener. Come join me in becoming an Ultimate Gardener day by day. The Ultimate Gardeners, as you can see, we're in a different setting right now, and we actually have a special guest with us today. We have David the Good over here. He is an expertise when it comes to permacultural gardening, as well as having a garden that sustains itself. Isn't that right?
Right, generally. Yeah.
And so we're just going to be talking about a few overall questions about how David the Good started gardening, about the method he does, and just methods in general that he prefers to make gardening easier day by day, year after year, to help other gardeners grow in their gardening skills as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into this video. So when it comes to Florida, it's really hot. Very much humid,
Right.
forest-like. And I always complain because I'm always like, listen, some plants, when I'm always in the ornamental stage of my life, I'm always like, I can't grow hydrangeas, I can't grow this, I can't grow that, because we don't have a winter. But
Right.
I never really focused on what can grow here, which is a lot of fruit trees.
Yeah.
And so I've always been dying to ask you, for everybody out there as well, is there any particular fruit trees that perform better in South Florida than any other tree out there?
Oh, that's yeah. First of all, for like fast production and feeding yourself both in starches and in sugars, like fresh fruit and as a starch, bananas and plantains. I mean, there's so many varieties of bananas and plantains where you can cook it like a root, so it acts like a root vegetable, but it also is sweet, and you can use it as a dessert or eat it right off of the tree. And also, there's so much compostable material when you chop those trunks up and everything. Ernst Goetz, who does syntropic agriculture down in Brazil, the banana is the center of his whole system. He chops the trunks up, he lays them on the ground, and as they rot down, they slowly drip water, whatever they're next to. Half a trunk laying on the ground, it's like a slow waterer for the next couple of months. It really, really slowly decays and holds a lot of water. So there's so many things you can do with it. Even if you're raising a pig, which you can't really do in the city. I mean, maybe you can get away with it. Depends on where in the city you are and how much you pay your neighbors. But you can chop up the trunks of a banana tree, pour a little molasses in it, ferment it for 2 or 3 days, and it'll rot down enough you can feed it to the pig and fatten a pig on it. So there's like so many uses. So banana and plantains would be like my top. But beyond that, when you're in South Florida, a lot of people say, oh, why can't I grow blueberries? I wish I could grow blueberries. Do you know how I can grow apples? Do you know how I can grow pears? And I'm like, look, there's like 40 fruit trees from up north that everybody knows and loves. But if you get down to the tropics, there's about 2,000.
Yeah.
So there's jabuticaba, and there's canistel, and there's star apple, and there's soursop and sugar apple. I mean, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So it's like we focus on one thing that annoys us, and we don't look at all the blessings that are absolutely around us. There's so many people up north that would kill to have a climate like this where it never freezes. The entire bounty of the tropics, we're talking many, many, many thousands or even millions more species can be grown here than anywhere else. And the way I would say to explore it is to go to the botanical gardens, go to the Fruit and Spice Park in Homestead, go visit like the Broward County Rare Fruit and Vegetable Council, see what they're growing. I mean, I had black Suriname cherries there. Those are so good.
Yeah, I've tried those before.
And it's like, why are we all growing these? You would never have to buy fruit again, even with a tiny backyard here, if you just said, I'm not gonna buy apples from Washington State anymore. I'm gonna grow wax apples. And I'm gonna grow mangoes.
I have an apple tree at home. The first year, it did give apples. It's a Golden Dorset apple tree because a company sent it out for me to try it. But then later on, I realized that that's not a self-pollinator. So it's just been sitting there. And I also have the blueberries and the
You just need an Anna or an Einsheimer or something to pollinate it.
Yeah, I need to do.
Just plant one right alongside it and let them run into each other.
Because the thing I was confused on was like, how did the first year it had apples, and then it just decided to say, okay, this is more apples. It blooms like very pretty, but
it does bloom. Okay.
Yeah, that's the little nuance I have with that. And so back to the flowers, because I love flowers, but edible flowers. I know that's something that's very underrated in the gardening industry because I don't see a whole bunch of gardeners do it. It's either ornamentals or it's either grow your own food. That's mainly the two organizations you see in the garden industry. I know there's a whole bunch of edible flowers out there, like the cranberry hibiscus, that's one.
Mm-hmm.
There is the blue butterfly pea, which is really great. If you have to narrow it down to one edible flower to grow, what would it be?
Oh, hibiscus. I love hibiscus. But I want to put a secondary one on there too.
Yes.
Canna lilies.
Yes.
Because canna lilies, I can eat the blooms on it, and they taste kind of like lettuce, but I can also dig up the roots and eat the roots if I want to, and they're just beautiful. But the hibiscus blooms, people don't realize that they're edible, and a lot of the hibiscus even have softer leaves that you can eat too. Like you mentioned, cranberry hibiscus, that's one of the species. There's Albomachus manihot, which is an edible leaf hibiscus. It makes a big edible bloom, but it also makes leaves that are like the size of dinner plates, that are just like a lettuce, and you can just take cuttings of it and stick it in the ground. They have these really fleshy cuttings, and it grows year after year after year. I used to have them back here, but after about 6 years or so, they got run over by the Turk's cap, and they're gone.
Yeah, Turk's cap is something that will take over the garden.
It totally do it.
Something that, when it comes to hibiscus, is that you see a lot of Jamaican sorrel or other names is the hibiscus tea. When I was younger, I thought you could just grab the hibiscus flowers, dry them, and grow them, but there's an actual particular plant that they grow it from. I'm growing it this year, so we're gonna see how that goes. But have you ever grown that variety?
Yeah, actually, a nickname here in Florida, they used to call it Florida cranberry because the tartness is very, very similar to a cranberry. Cranberries don't grow here. They want a real cold, acid bog, and they live way up north where a lot of other stuff doesn't even grow. And so this is so similar. My wife has taken, it's the calyx, which is that fat part around the pod. It fattens up, and any of you islanders, it's like we're talking baby language to you because you already know all this stuff, but but it grows around the base of the little pod, and you break those pieces off and they're really sour, tart, like just super zippy. It's where Red Zinger tea comes from. I think that's what they use. And my wife took her mom's cranberry sauce recipe from our Thanksgiving and put those calyxes in it instead of cranberries, and it was awesome. I actually think it's better. So anything where you're making a cranberry sauce, you can put it in there. And down in the islands, they made rum punch with it. They waited all year. They would make a non-alcoholic rum punch for the kids, and then they would make the alcohol version for the adults. And it just has this, it's really zippy and red, and it's delicious. Yeah, that one's really easy to grow here.
So when it comes to sustainable gardening, what did you find so interesting about this method of gardening that you decided to say, okay, this is where I'm drawing the line. This is the method I'm going for.
This is what I'm going for. I've always been an experimenter. Like, I always want to see which thing works, and so I'll test things side by side. And sometimes on the YouTube channel, people will be like, I don't understand. Last year you were doing it like this, and why are you doing this? Or why do you have this raised bed when you did this wide rows? You don't like wide rows anymore? Or why are you tilling? And why did you do deep mulch on this one? And it's because there are many, many, many different methods that will work. And so what I like to do is try a whole bunch of different things instead of just committing and becoming slavishly devoted to one method. I pick it and I say, okay, I'll try that, and I'll try this, and I'll try this, and I'll do what this guy says. This guy seems to know what he's doing. This guy seems to know what he's doing. And when I tried this method of building a food forest down here in South Florida, it was so much easier. But I just had to convince my dad to give up his grass, because this backyard was grass, and then it started to get weedy, and my dad was tired of mowing it, and I jumped on the opportunity. I'm like, Dad, if you don't want to mow all this space, why don't we just plant a food forest? You're getting a little older. Why don't we just make a huge and at first he was like, I don't know about this. But after a little while, as the trees started to grow and he started to get fruit from the backyard, then he started going, we put a food forest in the backyard back there. It's a pretty good idea. We're gonna probably put a couple more things in. And then he started cutting down the ornamental trees. That's when I knew I'd converted him. Yep. He cut down the Schefflera tree that he had planted a long time ago, a big looking umbrella tree, He cut it down. He says, I'm putting a cherry tree in over there. And he put it in acerola.
That's great.
But for this climate, South Florida gets a lot of rain, it's warm. If you strip the ground down here and garden in the ground, it just turns into drifts of sand so quickly, and just looks, I mean, it's dust. It's just like gray, dirty looking dust. And so when you never till it, I noticed when I'd go walking around the neighborhoods, places that hadn't been taken care of, where they would start to get filled with all these invasive plants, and they'll turn into a forest by itself. That's what it wants to be. But if you keep it mowed and low, you just get patchy sand and stickers and weeds, and it's just, you know, it doesn't make much. But this sort of thing, it starts to build the soil up underneath. As a matter of fact, if you dig under here,
now it's rich.
You can see it's turned black.
Yeah.
And this, actually, let's see if I pull it from here. This is what we started with over here, and this is what we have. And that's because we don't turn the ground anymore, and we throw all of the leaves down on the ground, and we chop everything up and throw it on the ground. It becomes a self-mulching, self-feeding system. So if you're in a climate that was originally forest and wants to grow back to forest, a forest-based system is good.
Yeah.
If you're in a prairie, you might raise animals instead.
Yeah.
And you know, and whatever would grow natively on your prairie, but you kind of got to figure out this fits the climate.
Yeah. It's crazy how we have a whole bunch of things similar. Like my dad does not want to give up. Like he literally barely even has like a little square, like not even like a square of grass, and he still has to mow. And I'm like, Dad, come on now. Like we could do so much more with this, and you're like, no, I want this for me. I'm like, you don't even have time.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Come on now. And my sand looks exactly like this, except it's like almost half sand, half soil.
Well, my dad didn't give up on his grass until I was in my 30s, so you might have some time. I mean,
well, I almost took up the entire garden. Like it's just like little. I'm like trying to. Okay, you know.
When I was a kid, my garden spread around an entire quarter of the yard. It kept going a little further, a little further, a little further.
That's how mine started too, like from a little tiny piece to then going like this until so one of my viewers sent me a greenhouse, and they're like, "Okay, Daddy, let's go." And then we kept going. Once he started seeing that I kept growing in my gardening methods, and so just like every gardener always experiments to see what method of gardening works best for them. That's why I always changed, because I was first ornamental, then I was like, no, we're just gonna do food. No, we're gonna do both. And then now I'm like, I don't know. So now we're just seeing if I could manage both of them, because gardening is just a hobby that it's never done. It's always your gardens. A whole bunch of people are like, oh, my garden is completed. No, it's not.
No, it's not. Every year it's new again.
Yep, it's always new. There's always something you have to take care of. And so with wrapping this video up, anything you have to say for any gardeners out there interested in doing sustainable edible gardening?
Yeah, if you are gardening in South Florida, Emmanuel's a guy. So, you know, just keep an eye on what he's doing. And don't be afraid to experiment and test and see what works. And don't get super precious, right?
Yep.
Don't just plant one plant and then go, oh no, it's not working, and then like, I'm a terrible gardener. I have my thumbs are dead, you know. Don't do that. Anybody can be a green thumb. You can learn it just like you can learn anything else. But really, the biggest thing is your mindset and losing the fear. I mean, losing the fear of gardening and the fear of failure, and know that you're going to fail constantly over and over again. And then bit by bit, you'll be like, oh, that worked. I can't believe that worked. You find that one plant that works really well, and you start growing more of it.
Yep.
I mean, when I wrote the book Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening.
Yes.
I wrote the book Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening after killing tons and tons of plants. I just kept throwing plants at the backyard, and the ones that lived ended up being the basis of gardens in the future. So about 5 years of just throwing stuff up in North Florida was when I wrote that book. And the ones that didn't die and wanted to keep growing for me were the ones I recommended, because now they were proven winners. But you learn that through failure. You just fail fast and try the next thing, and you fail fast and you try the next thing. Next thing you know, you succeeded.
Yep. That's how everybody finds their own way, because we all experiment. We all kill plants. I've killed thousands of plants. So I'm like, there's no, even the professional gardeners, the one who has a degree in these things, they always kill plants. So that's why I'm like, don't feel bad whenever this happens, because how much you bet somebody else also did it that has a higher level and higher experience than me. So I was like, always give it a shot, because gardening is a hobby that first and foremost was always underrated, that I felt like. But then once COVID hit, that's when everything started going up. They're like, we need to grow our own food right now in this backyard. So that was definitely something that I'm glad that took a skyrocket in the gardening industry. And all different methods that started coming out, like container gardening, edible, sustainable gardening, row garden, grocery store gardening like you do. There's a whole bunch of different methods out there of gardening. You just have to find the right one for you. That
Yeah,
works best.
absolutely. The most important thing is that you're growing food.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the entire thing. So that's gonna be it for this exciting Spartan video. Huge shout out to David the Good for joining on with us on this video. It was so exciting to meet him in person. He's literally the same person on video and in person as well. So that's gonna be it. If you learned something new, please leave a like down below. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing to show the Ultimate Gardening channel some support. Once again, like I always say in other videos, we're getting closer to 3,000. So yeah, I'm gonna be hosting.
Push them over, guys.
We're gonna be hosting a huge giveaway once that milestone comes. And leave me any video suggestions down below, and I'll gladly do them. Thank you all so much for watching this video. May God bless you and your entire family. And never forget to grow big, Ultimate Gardeners. Bye, guys.